just before you got on here, I was actually playing some Mario Kart. And I was playing, I don't know which cup or whatever, but 150cc, and I beat the first level, got first place. Second race, first place. Third race, first place. Fourth race. Oh,
God. I know what's coming.
I'm in first place. I'm in first place. I get hit by like a freaking green shell or something. Oof. And second place. So 2 stars, no 3 stars. It's very disappointing.
I feel your pain. I don't know. I haven't played recently enough to like truly feel your pain, but I feel your pain. Welcome to Pride and Accomplishment. My name is Jason.
And I'm Chris. This is episode 72. So Jason, you seen any good movies lately?
Good as a stretch. Good as a stretch. I saw Batman. I saw Uncharted. I watched, because we were going to do this episode, I did watch the Sonic movie. And good as a stretch.
Oof. So the premise that we had for today's episode is to talk about some of kind of the video game properties that are in the movies or in other non-video game media these days. Because it does seem that there's a little bit of a renaissance, I guess, of video game properties that are actually making it into TV shows and movies that are not terrible. I don't know if, good may be a stretch, but they're not bad, right?
Yeah, I'll give you that. They're not bad. Some of the older ones are bad. But they're not great. And maybe we should talk about this over this episode, but I'm like trying to come up with why they're not great. Because video games have great stories, right? A lot of good, really great, some of the best video games are because they have the best story. So you think that should translate well in some way to other media. And most of the time, it just doesn't. And I think I'm like coming to a conclusion on why, but I may get there over the course of this episode.
Some of the movies that I can think of that have not done particularly well that have been based on video games are like the Warcraft movie that they did like 6 or 7 years ago, and the Prince of Persia movies with Jake Gyllenhaal. You remember those? I never saw them, but
I do remember one of them. Yeah, I can't point out anything specific, but yeah, I remember the movie.
And then they did like Tomb Raider also with Angelina Jolie, right?
You're right. Now that you mention that, I don't know that I ever watched those.
I'm not sure that I did either, but they've always kind of been just kind of a almost like a B action movie, if that makes any sense. Like they're trying really hard to be a blockbuster, but they're kind of missed the mark.
I think that's a good way to say it. I think for the people that don't know the video game, they still have to like somehow generally advertise to those people. And I think you're right. To those people, they are, to the general non-video game audience, these in most cases can be seen as just an action movie. But they don't. I mean, here's like the first thing I have to say is like they don't perfectly deliver on their like either retelling or alternate storytelling of a video game, and they don't perfectly deliver on there being a good action movie. Like they're just mediocre at both in most of the time, in almost every case I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there actually are a few things though where they've been fairly successful within the last I want to say 3 to 5 years. And like for me, Detective Pikachu comes to mind, right? That was a movie that everybody thought was going to be awful, and it turned out to be really good, or reasonably really good.
I mean, I would put Detective Pikachu in it was fine. I like Ryan Reynolds. I mean, I think part of the reason that movie was successful was because of Ryan Reynolds. And yeah, it was good. Like, man, I don't even know if I want to use the term good. I thought it was fine. I thought it was not a waste of time. It was it was better than that, but I don't know that it's one of those movies that I would see like, yeah, that's good, highly recommend, or even recommend to other people. It was just like, oh, you've seen it? Cool, I've seen it too.
I think they did a good job in Detective Pikachu of like developing the world, like doing the world building of a place where people like humans and Pokemon would interact, and how that would kind of shape up in terms of like, what does it look like where do they use Pokemon to do work, like do they use them as pets, like what's the relationship between them, and that kind of thing. I think they did a good job taking that out of kind of the anime, because like Pokemon of course was a TV show before it was a video game, I think, or maybe it was a video, I don't remember which came first, but that's another crossover, I guess, between games and movies, and maybe I'm going to save that a little bit to say TV shows that are animated based on games, because they tend to do pretty well. So we can talk about that in a little bit. But like, this was a really good live action version of Pokemon, and everybody thought it was going to be terrible because live action versions of video games are usually bad, or at least they kind of flop. So I would say it's better than fine. I think Detective Pikachu was actually pretty good.
All right, we'll probably agree to disagree on that one. I can think of like I think live action movies based on video games that are targeting a specific video game are typically pretty bad.
Okay, yeah, we could. Okay,
but the one that you do have it on this list. I loved Free Guy.
Yes,
loved it. Free Guy was this movie where they didn't target a specific game. I mean, it was like it was an MMO that the game, the story revolved around. There's really no spoilers there. And it took elements from video gaming and made them part of the movie. But it never really, I mean, I think it targeted kind of like first person shooter kind of mentality and some of those like toxic MMO mentalities and some of that, but it didn't target a specific video game. And I really think that aided in Free Guy's success, because it like appealed to the audience, but didn't set up any expectations for lore or story or anything like that. It also targeted, just general nerds and geeks and software engineers, because a lot of the plot devices that centered around software and game development were like real and cool and like applicable to game development, which is usually not the case, right? It's normally just like, that's not how that works. So I think Free Guy was great.
Oh yeah, Free Guy was excellent. And yeah, it was based, you could almost say it was based on like a GTA Online kind of a thing, like Grand Theft Auto. That was kind of the vibe they were going for.
Yeah, that's probably pretty close.
But you're right. It didn't have anything to live up to, right? It was very open-ended. It just happened to have video games as a like plot point or device. But I think they did a really good job of paying service to that culture. Like they brought in, and again, I hope this isn't really a spoiler. I mean, the movie's been out for a while now, but they brought in like real streamers, right, as like cameos and stuff like that. So like they were really embracing the culture of it and like the I don't know, authenticity, I guess I would say, of gamers and that kind of thing. So I think that appealed to me. I mean, I'm not a big Twitch person, not a big game streamer person, but we've talked about that before. But I did appreciate that like Ninja was in there, I think. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and I think so. This like going a little bit higher level. I think Free Guy did. Wow, you just keep adding cool things to the list. Sorry, he's updating the show notes in the background as we're talking, and everything he writes, I was just like, oh yeah, that was really good. And all of it doesn't like everything that we're going to talk about doesn't target a specific game. Where was I? I think Free Guy, and if we take it a little higher level, I think the reason we're seeing a resurgence in this is people are starting to recognize, or when I say people, I think Hollywood or whoever, the other forms of media are starting to recognize what a powerhouse gaming is. And gaming is starting to leak over into mobile, right? And if you look at like earnings reports for companies on how much they make on PC gaming versus console gaming versus mobile gaming has always been through like absolutely through the roof, right? There's just so many more devices out there. There's just such a larger audience for it. But now like mainstream games, think like Fortnite and, you know, Diablo and you know, all of these games that you traditionally thought of as PC only or console only are making their way to mobile now. I mean, look at xCloud Gaming and, you know, being able to play literally anything streaming to your phone now. You know, your phone's not actually running anything. I think it's kind of opening up this market and saying, hey, like games are mainstream now. Like being a gamer isn't a niche thing anymore. And that's causing movies like Free Guy. It's causing, and maybe we'll talk about it in a second because I love this show. It's causing TV shows like Mythic Quest, and it's also leading to more focused media like Detective Pikachu and Tomb Raider, and I don't know if we've mentioned it yet, but the Uncharted movie, and you know, things like that where like they're putting a lot of money into these movies and TV shows.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree that the gaming culture is becoming much, much more mainstream than it had been when we were growing up, I would say. I mean, it was something that kids did, but it was definitely not something that adults would do. And now there's much more of wow, there's people that make their living playing video games. I mean, you know, everybody likes to make fun of streamers, but it is a real thing. Like you can make money playing video games online. And I think that having all those things kind of come together, and then there's other things like where there's crossover into media where like video games as a story device are also coming into play. I'm thinking like Wreck-It Ralph is, you know, an animated movie that came out several years ago, but it was all based around, you know, what if characters in video games were real people that had personalities and all of that. And so that also in a way kind of is a movie about games. And all the games not all the games, but many of the games in Wreck-It Ralph are, you know, made up for the movie, but they're using real properties, and they have, you know, real Street Fighter and you know, a bunch of cameos of you know, Root Beer Tapper and all that kind of stuff. But all of it, it's just, it's really exciting to see, and everything culture-wise, they're coming into their own on the video game side.
Wreck-It Ralph is a great movie, and I think it's another kind of one of those claims that it didn't focus. I mean, it did focus on a specific game, a specific character, but it's not one we already knew, right? It wasn't telling a lore. It wasn't living in a world that we already knew. And those seem to me to be much more successful. But it's hard. It's like really hard, right? Because I mean, it's harder, right? Because you're starting from nothing. Whereas in something like Detective Pikachu, there is a groundwork for lore. Right, the characters are already made, the sounds they make, what they look like. You know, people inherently recognize a lot of it. But when they advertise Wreck-It Ralph, they have to introduce you to like completely new characters. And as hard as it is, it seems to work. That's not to say that it works every time, though. Because there's the what's the Adam Sandler movie? God, it's really bad.
Oh, Pixels.
Oh God, don't watch that one. But I guess you know what, that one used actual video games as, I don't know. I don't remember it very much.
The only thing I remember about Pixels, which I did see the movie, I believe, is the giant Pac-Man in real life that was like eating things or whatever. There is no lore to Pac-Man, so it's not like you can say that they were screwing up the you know, lack of telling people what the premise of Pac-Man was, because like you can catch that in 10 seconds.
Yeah, that was a bad movie.
It was a bad movie, though. It was definitely a bad movie. In terms of, so what we've kind of come to at this point is movies that are not based on existing IP tends to do okay because they can do their own world building and they don't get caught between kind of fan service and explaining to new people what's going on. I think there's another kind of thing, and maybe I want to go into the animated side a little bit more here, and especially on the TV front. In the last like 2 years, there's been 2 or 3 different TV shows that have come out based on video games, and in fact based on MOBAs for some reason. And so you have like Dota Dragon's Blood that's on Netflix, and then you have Arcane, the League of Legends story or whatever, on
also on Netflix.
Also on Netflix. Yeah, okay. Thank you. I forgot that. And so those are both animated TV series, I would say, that are based on games that have a lot of lore but don't have a lot of story, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that's a good way of saying it. And I'll just come out and say it. Both of them are excellent series.
Right, but I think it's because the games that they're based on, you don't get caught up in like, oh, they missed that story beat, or oh, why doesn't this character look like that, or insert whatever complaint you would have about any of the other video game movies.
I'll take it a step further and say I will broaden it even further and say, now that we've broken the barrier into the TV show realm, maybe it's a little bit more varied. The animated ones have been doing very well, but all of the TV shows, except for maybe one that we're going to talk about, are much better than their movie counterparts. And I think that's just a fact of the medium, because TV shows allow you, they're longer, right? They allow you to go more in depth. They allow you to tell a character's story more. They give you more freedom because they give you more time. And Arcane, Dota, but the one I'm thinking of here is Witcher.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Witcher.
Excellent series. Excellent series. Because it's giving the same attention to the story and the characters as the video game would. Because video games are also very long-form media, right? They're 60-hour stories or 30-hour stories or however, right? Like they're just so long. And movies just don't give the same... The movies just don't have the same amount of time to tell a story or to tell, to develop a character. And I think that goes the TV shows. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is like TV shows and video games are closer in their medium of telling a story than movies and video games are.
I think I agree with you. And that's an interesting point about the duration of the storytelling, like, and how many minutes of runtime that you have to kind of play with to tell your story. So if games do better when they have kind of more room to breathe in terms of like hours or minutes of content, why hasn't somebody made a multi-part movie or like a multi-movie series that they greenlight maybe as a trilogy from the beginning to tell a video game story long form or like longer form in movie form, if that makes any sense?
Yes, that makes sense. I think the answer is because that's not the way the movies work. It's not the way movies work. It's not the way
business of movies.
The business of movie making works. I think that's the way TV shows work, right? And someone will say, we'll give you $10 million for season 1. And I think that's the way, that's how they do it with books, right? They think of Hunger Games or other media or the Harry Potter. Essentially what they do is they say, we'll pay for the first one. And if the first one does well, we'll greenlight the rest of the series. So they have to tell a story in the first movie that has a beginning and the end because there never might be another one. But now they've kind of proven that formula. So they, whatever. But video games are still this really weird... Well, I'm thinking of another reason. But video games are the kind of the weird in between where like they haven't really proven, and quite honestly, they've kind of proven the opposite, that video games don't turn into movies very well. Books turn into movies kind of well, right? Video games don't turn into movies very well. And what I think maybe what the industry is finding is that video games turn into TV shows really well. They're not. I don't think anyone wants to take the risk. I don't think anyone wants to say we're greenlighting you for a 3-part series or a 3-part trilogy. I think the other problem with video games is that they are not typically broken up in a way. The script is not written in a way that breaks them up into 3-part trilogies or, whatever. Books, The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, they were written as books, so their movies got the same arcs. Whereas if you think about a show like The Witcher, or let's say Mass Effect, right? Even Mass Effect, which is a trilogy, wouldn't quite fit into a movie format. It just isn't this. Like there's 60 hours of content in Mass Effect. Cutting it down to a 1.5 to 2.5 hour movie just doesn't work. And I don't know that anyone's figured out the right formula yet, where they say, we're going to take the Mass Effect story and we're going to turn it into a movie that is as gripping. Whether they change, whether they do the book thing where they tell literally the same story, or whether they attempt something like Detective Pikachu where they tell a totally different story. I think that's maybe why part of the reason Detective Pikachu did so well, because it wasn't it was based on the existing lore, but not on the existing story. I just don't think either they figured it out or that it just works. It just might not work. I love TV shows. I think that's the right avenue for games if they want to tell more of a story. I think books will work too, but I think TV shows, by the way we've seen it with Mythic Quest and The Witcher and Arcane and Dota, and we'll talk about it in a second. Maybe the Halo TV show will work out. Who knows? First episode wasn't a great sign, but I think that's the right avenue.
I'm also thinking, as you were talking, I was thinking about another piece of the storytelling conversation with movies is you have to keep things moving forward because the movie's only 2 hours long and you do want to tell a self-contained story, I guess. And in games, there's just so much information that you get because you are the player, if that makes any sense. So a game has a main character and it has a player that drives that main character and makes that character walk places and do things. And I'm thinking in movies, you get these scenes that are you would never see a scene in a game where it's two characters sitting in a room together having a conversation that doesn't that's very background heavy, if that makes sense. I guess I'm thinking you would in a movie, you might have somebody sit there and be like, oh, so you've got long hair, why do you have long hair? And they would have this conversation about my mother had always gave me haircuts and then she died and so I've never cut my hair since, or something like that. Some weird backstory thing that comes out in a movie format that just wouldn't happen in a game. There would just never be a cutscene where just that kind of thing would occur, or maybe it would, but I would just ignore it. But
exposition is a very rare video game storytelling device.
Yes, that's maybe a very succinct way to put the thing that I was just rambling about.
Yeah, I mean, cutscenes do exist in video games, right? But I think video games, at least the big critiques of video games, will say, don't tell me, show me, right? And that's a big critique of movies too. But it's one of those things in video games where if something really cool is happening, don't let it happen to the character. Let the person play it. And I think there's a really fine balance to that on, not getting caught up with really stupid mechanics or QuickTime events. But yes, they're not going to just exposition at you for, 2.5 minutes in a cutscene.
Yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not crazy there. So I guess that's a lot to say that movie adaptations of video games are hard.
Hard. Yeah, absolutely. Particularly ones that retell the same story that already exists. Okay, we've covered a bunch of movies. I want to talk about, well, actually, first thing I want to say is Dota 2 Season 2 came out. Are you ready to watch? Can we, let's do it.
Okay, we can do it. Yes, we'll figure that out. I would like to watch it. Yes. It's all out now. We were waiting before it was coming out week by week. We were waiting for it to all be done.
Mythic Quest should be coming out with another season eventually. If you have Apple TV Plus and have not watched Mythic Quest, it is so funny. It is so good.
And you wouldn't think it would be, but it is.
It is funny for anyone that is even remotely connected to video gaming in any way, even in a mobile sense. They do it such that even people that just play mobile games will get what's going on, and it's very funny. I mean, it's obviously funnier to people that I think play MMOs and things like that, but because there are some very subtle hints very subtle jokes. But oh man, it's very good. And the characters are excellent.
I would be willing to say that if you're listening to this podcast, you would probably enjoy Mythic Quest.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Consider our audience here, Jason.
Good point.
If you've made it here to episode 72 of P&A, you'll enjoy Mythic Quest.
Absolutely.
So at this point, I think we've got two avenues. We've got one new TV show to talk about, and that's Halo. And then we've got a couple of video game movies that are coming out soon or have come out recently that I kind of wanted to talk about, and that kind of started this whole idea for this episode. Which way do you want to go?
Let's go to the TV show, because I think there's only one, right?
Yep, there's only one.
The Halo TV show on Paramount Plus. I think it's a Paramount Plus only, right? Like you have to subscribe to Paramount
original.
Plus.
Yep.
Yeah. So it will never be on TV. So I don't know if it's really a TV show. It's a Paramount Plus streaming show.
It's a streaming show.
Yeah. It's based on Halo. It's got Master Chief in it. Episode 1 has come out, and Chris and I have watched episode 1 as of this recording. It's Chris, do you want to describe what it was?
So I will say I am not a fan of Halo in that I've never played the game Halo. So feel free to write me, send us an email, PNA podcast,
You have played it. I've played it with you.
I have played the multiplayer of Halo. I played it on the original Xbox, at like a
you
LAN
and
party
I
at somebody's
played
house.
the story a little bit. Multiplayer story.
Don't think we did.
I'm almost positive we did, because you complained about how long it took to kill the enemies.
Oh, that's right. We played the first story mission of like Halo 3, I think, because that was whatever was on Game Pass at the time. And I did not enjoy it even a little bit.
Not even a tiny bit.
And I'm sorry about that, but I didn't.
I think that's fair. I think Halo was it was built in a time that it was brand new, and I think the time to kill for enemies is entirely too long for my liking as well. Like, you have to pump so many bullets into them, and it's just the pacing of Halo is very distinct.
Yes, and I don't like it. So coming into it from that perspective, we're talking about the TV show now. I thought the TV show did not start particularly strong, in my opinion. And I think a lot of that to me was that I did not care much at all about any of the characters. But I'm not sure that somebody who's played all the games would have either.
I think they would have cared more. I think some of the characters you definitely didn't recognize. Some of the Covenant things that they were cool. Like, I thought the elites were done very well. I thought I don't remember what he's called, but the guy in the chair, the floating chair thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I cannot remember the name of that enemy or that Covenant character or type or whatever. I thought that was, it was cool to see. Like, there was lore and background there. Seeing Master Chief was cool, but even as someone who enjoys the Halo story and appreciates the background and the history there, and wants Master Chief to be this big badass, Spartan, pillar of glory. It just wasn't there. It just didn't do it for me. And maybe the rest of the series will. But I just think they fell in the first episode, right? It's we've got a long way to go, and I think we will watch it. In the first episode, I think it just fell a tiny bit flat. I think it didn't evoke, Chris, you know me. When I get excited about something, I get excited about something. I get loud and I get very excited. I mean, some of you have heard it on this podcast before. When something really cool happens in Mass Effect, I get really loud and really excited. I never got that feeling during this entire first episode. I mean, you could there was a moment. I'm getting really excited now explaining this, but there was a moment in the show where you just yes, this is going to be awesome. I think I literally said that out loud as we were watching it. I was like, this is going to be awesome. because, and I don't want to spoil it, but essentially, you know the action's about to begin, and it wasn't, and I was so let down. The music didn't do it for, like, the music was good, but it didn't evoke this like really strong, like, you know, like crazy cool like emotion. It didn't evoke, like, I didn't really like, I wasn't like super excited to see Master Chief. Like, they just did it in a way where I was just like not super pumped about it. And I just felt like every opportunity they had to be really cool and really video gamey and really lean into, you know, some of the things that Halo is known for and good at, every one of them fell flat. So even someone that knows the story more than you, right? Like, not really a spoiler, but at some point you hear the shield, like the shield is gone sound. You know, if you've played Halo, you literally know exactly what I'm talking about right now, where it's like that high pitched beep, 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 beep. Even that, you were like, oh my God, it's so cool. They're using the sounds from the game. I know exactly what is happening right now. It didn't do anything for me. And that's really sad.
I think for me, I am a little bit fatigued on the Space Marine concept, because we've been doing it in media and games and everything else for quite some time. So I think I was pretty jaded going into it, and I wasn't pleasantly surprised coming out. So that was really my big nitpick or letdown, I guess, is that I maybe didn't like the premise, because it was just, to me, again, as someone who's not really played Halo much, it was like faceless Space Marine people. And I know that Master Chief is the main one, but like, you know, faceless Space Marine people doing Space Marine stuff and like shooting aliens. And that's not terribly exciting to me yet. I'm hoping there's a little bit more to it as the show progresses, because yeah, we will keep watching it. But I was not gripped by the first episode.
Episode 2 comes out or did come out or comes out soon. I think what we're going to do is probably let them group up and maybe watch 2 or 3 episodes at a time. I think it's 10 episodes. So we will get the final report in 9 or so weeks.
Yeah, we should set a follow-up item to talk about this in a few episodes.
Let us know if you're watching it and what you thought. I'd be interested to see someone else's perspective, particularly someone that has played all of the Halo games, right? Like I've played some of them. I have not played them all. So I'm interested to hear what others may say or think about the series. Okay, I did some homework for this episode.
Whoa.
I know. You told me you wanted to talk about the Sonic movie, and I had never seen the Sonic movie because there is a second Sonic movie coming out, and you kind of want to go see it. So I said, oh, okay, I'll watch the first Sonic movie so that I can talk about it on this episode.
Yes, I am a Sonic fan. I wouldn't say fanboy, but I'm a Sonic fan. I started, as we've talked about previously on P&A, I started off with a Sega Genesis as like my main, like my first brand new console. And I had Sonic 1, I had Sonic 2, I got Sonic 3 at some point. I was really into the Sonic, like, side-scrolling 2D games more so. I never had a Super Nintendo, so I didn't do, Super Mario World. Like, while everybody else was playing Super Mario World, I was probably playing Sonic 3. So I have a very soft spot for Sonic the Hedgehog as a character. And I watched the Sonic movie, kind of on a whim. Like, it was something that early on in the pandemic, like, the movie had come out and it hit theaters, and then it had gone to streaming. And I had some extra, like, Amazon promotional digital credit or whatever. And it was like a promo for like $1. You could rent the Sonic movie. And so I went ahead and watched it at this point now, probably 2 years ago. And I was pleasantly surprised. I wouldn't say that it was a cinematic masterpiece, and that is not the position that I'm coming from here, but I did enjoy that movie. So now I asked Jason to watch it so that we could talk about it, because by the time this episode publishes, the Sonic movie will have come out a week ago, the second one, the sequel. So that's why I thought it was kind of timely and topical to talk about this today.
Do you think the first Sonic movie accurately represented the character that is Sonic?
That is an interesting question. I do kind of. I think that Sonic as a character is always kind of in the, like, teenager that doesn't quite understand their role in the world kind of vibe. And I feel like that was the overall idea that I got from the Sonic movie there as well. It was a little bit weird because it felt a lot like Detective Pikachu, speaking of movies we've talked about today, because it had kind of this buddy system where you had like the human and then the video game character kind of a thing. And so that was weird. But I don't know. I mean, I think that Sonic himself is a little bit more wisecracky than I think he was in the movie, if I'm remembering right. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. I should have also done homework, but I did not.
Okay. I mean, I don't know Sonic enough to have placed it. I felt like he was more, just from what I remember of the Sonic games, I felt like he was more childish in the movie than what I would have expected. A little bit more even preteen than teenager. And I don't know if that was to target a kind of a slightly different demographic to make it a little bit more family friendly or what. I don't know what it was, but it kind of put me off a little bit from the character. There were exactly 2 moments in the entire movie I laughed. I do not remember what they were, but it was I believe it was the bad guy, Dr. Robotnik, that made funny lines that I laughed at.
Well, yeah, that's played by Jim Carrey, so it's like he's obviously a comedian. So
he was pretty good. I think. I mean, I think he played the part well. I don't know that I appreciated the part. I generally did not like the movie.
That's fair.
Like at all. I nearly fell asleep. I kind of did other things just to make it through. I thought the ending was touching, and I won't ruin it. But in general, I just did not care for it at all.
I think I'm getting hit in the nostalgia on this one because it does have a lot of the things that are like, or at least like the starts of a lot of the things that were really kind of key touch points in the games. And I will also, I should disclaim this with saying the games that I played of Sonic were the ones that were like 2D on CRT televisions, not the Dreamcast, like voice acted Sonic games. I'm talking like the ones where he was just a, character in a video game that was like a little side scrolling 2D platformer for the most part. I am not up to date on the latest lore.
I wanted more of that. I felt like sure, Sonic's all about gotta go fast, right? Like it was, and he did some generally cool special effecty stuff in the show, but I just felt like it was missing an element that made, like, it had the Sonic character. I don't know that it had the Sonic world. And I know that was kind of on purpose, but I think for me personally, that really took away from the movie.
Yeah, I remember they had like a tease, especially I think it was right in the beginning. They show him like running through the planet Mobius, like with the place where he's from, and you're like, oh, cool.
Yeah, and he said like you can get like loop-de-loops for free at any time, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like that was the coolest 20 seconds of the movie.
Yeah, I would have liked to see more of that. I will definitely agree with you there, because something that was set in the Sonic multiverse or whatever, like the Sonic world, would have been, I think, more appealing to me than the one that's set in the real world. But there's kind of a genre that's emerging at this point now where it's like weird crossovers of video game characters into the real world. See Detective Pikachu, that maybe they were trying to go after, because this movie did come out not very far after Detective Pikachu. So I feel like there may be some keeping up with the Joneses going on there.
This was also the movie where Sonic looked like really bad, right?
Oh, yeah. This is the one that they started off with, like, they announced it and then they, showed a trailer of it and the internet just lost their minds and they went back to the drawing board. And within the span of like a year, they redid all of the CG for the character to make it look much less nightmare inducing. So that's good.
Nightmare inducing. Yes, I remember that. He had like really tiny eyes and I'm just like, why are you trying to make Sonic look like a real hedgehog?
Yeah, it was not a good call.
He's obviously not a real hedgehog. I think the biggest difference was his eyes were really tiny in the original and they changed them to be very large, like he actually is. And oh god, that was I could go find a picture.
It was bad.
Will you go see the new one in theaters?
It will depend a little bit on the timing, just scheduling in my life and whatever. I'm not sure that I'm going to make a serious special trip to do it, but I would like to try if I can. Yeah, I think I will.
Wow.
So I will say the thing about the second movie and the thing that I'm looking forward to, and I really have only watched, I think, maybe one trailer, and it was a little while ago, so I may be forgetting some of the details, but the second movie is about Sonic, and he finds Tails. Like, this is on the poster. This is no spoilers, but like, this is, Tails is involved. Similar to how in the video games, right, Sonic the Hedgehog 1 was just Sonic. Sonic 2 was Sonic and Tails, which is kind of cool. Also in the trailers, though, they are showing Knuckles, who was the sort of villain, a portion of a villain in Sonic 3, but then not as much afterwards. Sonic and Knuckles was a literal add-on game for Sonic 3, which is so cool. And I guess I should also say that I had the Sonic comic books growing up too, so I think I probably have a little bit more Sonic character development from that side of it, more so than the video games. I'm old, I'm sorry. But anyway, I'm excited for it. It has more characters that I think that I'm gonna like, because I do really like Tails as a character. I like to play as Tails in the game. I like to play as Knuckles in the game, so I'm a big fan, and I'm looking forward to seeing those characters brought to life. I'm concerned that they're going to let me down, but you won't know unless you see it, right?
Yeah, I think there's more opportunity for some dynamic storytelling with more Sonic universe characters. I think that would be interesting. I will await your review of it. I think if you come back and say, hey, like this one's also great, or this one's, like they really do add to it and they don't really like screw those characters up, I might watch it when it comes to streaming. At this point, though, without your review, I would just let this one go. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
The other thing that I'm looking forward to in this new movie, based on the trailers, is that they've given Dr. Robotnik his iconic mustache that's like 1.5 feet long on either side. And
they just added to the ridiculousness.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a ridiculous character anyway, but like in the games, he has this really long mustache that's just really awkward and weird. And they've done it in the trailers for the second one. I mean, it seems a little it's the kind of thing where it's like it works well in a cartoon. It's a little impractical in live action, but I'm excited that they're just continuing to develop this character and like give him the like appearance of the games. This is similar to what I said before, where it's like you have this expectation and this history coming from the games, and you're like, why doesn't Dr. Robotnik have his mustache? And
wasn't he fat in the game?
Oh yes, very fat. Yes,
and Jim Carrey is not.
No, very skinny. But that's okay. That's fine. I don't think it has to be, identical in that regard. But I do think that having the facial hair is going to be a like further kind of developing of that character. And it was like almost an origin story of him too, which was an interesting thing about the first movie, is you kind of saw him come into his own in terms of being a villain. So I'm interested to see how that all plays out. So I have high hopes for this movie. Let's put it that way.
I had high hopes for Uncharted.
I did too, and I think I don't know. You have to just take those with a grain of salt. This is the video game movie that is out most recently. Tom Holland is a weird Nathan Drake. I'll just say it. They shouldn't.
That's not. Yeah. No. I mean, it was kind of an origin story, so they needed a younger person. I get that. Because it was like Nathan Drake's first thing, right? It's what got him into the treasure hunting game. But Tom Holland was not their guy.
I have this problem a lot with movies and casting in movies where they pick somebody because they're famous, not because they're the best fit. And I have trouble with that just as a viewer, and that I can't get over the like, oh, this person is, Tom Holland is Spider-Man, right? He's already in like a major, huge franchise, and separating those things is challenging for me. And maybe that's unfair to the actor to say, like, if you're too recognizable in whatever your main franchise is, then I can't accept you in most other movies. But like, this is to me a kind of competing movie series or franchise to Spider-Man. And so it was very strange to see Spider-Man as the Uncharted guy.
I didn't have the same problem. I used to have, that happens for me for some other characters. But I think I think it shows the skill of the actor if they can genuinely make them different characters. Robert Downey Jr. is a great example. I saw him, obviously he's Iron Man, right? But I saw him in the movie The Judge, right in the middle of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff going on. I don't know how he had time to make this movie, but it's a drama about him and his dad, essentially, who's a judge. And I never once during that whole movie thought that that's Iron Man on screen right now. I think there was probably a moment or two in Uncharted where I said that's Spider-Man on screen right now. I don't think it was that bad. But I think I thought those things because I didn't think that Tom Holland was the right person for that movie to begin with.
I think the thing I missed about Tom Holland being Nathan Drake was that in the games, you see Nathan Drake, he's probably 5 or 10 years older than he's supposed to be in the movie. And he's like really comfortable with what he's doing. Like he's really like sure of himself and kind of has the Indiana Jones, like, I'm just going to quip at you and then everything's going to work out. And I'm going to, narrowly escape from situations and stuff because I'm so suave, essentially. Like James Bond, Indiana Jones, those kinds of things where you've got the hero that can be like, oh yeah, I'll figure this out. No problem. It's no big deal. I think in this case, because it was an origin story, you had a lot more of the kind of uncertain of like, well, we're just going to do this and see how it goes. Like, and a little more bumbling, I would say, from the character because he was, not self-confident in his abilities. And that I think really is so polarizingly different from the games that it was jarring. If you've played the Uncharted games.
Yeah, I haven't played the games, but in general, right, you're looking for a character. I'm going to do it again. You ready? Character growth, particularly one that is an origin story or, one that is growing into a character that you already know, can't be done in 2 hours. I just don't. I mean, or it's. I'll edit it and say it's very difficult to do in 2 hours. Because you're just like, there has not been nearly enough time. I don't care if this movie spanned 15 years. My mind says that there has not been enough time for this character to change what you originally introduced to me 2 hours ago. And to put something like, a brand new Nathan Drake origin story from a bumbling, thieving bartender, not really a spoiler, it's in the first scene, to Nathan Drake, it didn't work. Because you're right. You're expecting this confident, suave, smart, treasure hunter. And what we get was a college kid. And I think it would have been okay if you said, okay, this is a 1 to 2 season origin story that takes place over 20 hours of story to show the progression of this character from a bartender to a treasure hunter. And it didn't work. And there were so many jumps and plot holes and filling in the gaps and all of that stuff that it just was not a believable progression.
All of that being said about how this is not a cinematic masterpiece, I thought it was a fun movie.
I thought it was fine.
Like, if you have your expectations low enough to say, I just want to watch an action movie with a bunch of stuff blowing up and doing cool stuff and fight scenes and all of that kind of a thing. I thought it was decent in that lens. I don't think it was a necessarily great origin story for Nathan Drake, but I think it was a serviceable, generic treasure hunting action movie. Like if you took the IP, if you took the expectation of it being a video game movie out of it, it would have been a fine action movie.
I don't know. I don't know. It was like they were trying to combine Indiana Jones and National Treasure, and I just like it didn't work. I didn't like it. It didn't work for me. I don't think if someone says, "Hey, I'm looking for an action movie," just to find like it's Saturday evening and I don't have anything else to do, I'm just looking for an action movie, I would never recommend this movie. I would recommend what is Tom Holland doing in Nick Cage's movie?
That would have been a weird choice. Nicolas Cage is Uncharted and Nathan Drake.
I don't think that would have worked either.
Chloe.
Wait, super side note. Have you seen the movie where Nick Cage is playing Nick Cage?
No.
Oh God.
I liked the Uncharted movie. I think it was pretty good. I think I'm looking forward to the sequel. They've confirmed that there is a sequel. I'm looking forward to it. Based on the kind of after credit scenes that we're kind of course, setting up for the next one, I think it's going to go closer to the video games is kind of what it looked like. Based on the things that I had kind of read, some of the breakdowns and stuff after I saw the movie. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do and what they continue to do with this franchise. And I think it's nice to have a new kind of like, it's not new IP because it's coming from a video game, but it is new movie IP that will go into some kind of franchise, and it's not Marvel.
I mean, okay. Listen, I'm a broken record here. I would have preferred an Uncharted TV show.
I think I would have too. That's fair. Yes, I think that would have been better.
But
if they're going to choose to do it as a movie, I'm happy with that too.
And I'll probably watch it eventually.
Speaking of TV shows based on PlayStation franchises, I did just hear on another podcast today that they are working on a God of War TV show.
Okay. That'll be tough. But we'll see. So good. I would love... Can we talk about God of War for a second? I would love for them to remaster the original games.
I don't think they have the same level of storytelling. I mean, they do have storytelling, but like, I don't know that they're the same vibe as the most recent couple, the PS4 one.
They're not, but I want the story.
That's true. There is a lot of baggage that comes up, assuming that you've seen the previous games.
Yeah, I want like, there's so much like background that I've just assumed, and I think if they remastered the originals, the originals, while decent in their story and pretty good games, are not serviceable to go back to. I would love them to remake it, and but I guess I'm wondering where the TV show would take place, if it's more like with the boy, or if it's more earlier.
I believe it is based on the 2018 game with the boy. Yes.
Okay. All right. It was a great game. Excellent game.
It is a great game. And the sequel should be coming out this year. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. We'll see.
Oh, gosh. Can't wait. Literally bought a PS5 just for that game.
And Horizon. Don't forget Horizon.
Yeah, sure. But you could play it on PS4. Tell us about your TV and movie-going experience. We talked about a bunch of shows today. We will put them all in the show notes so that you can reference back. We probably won't do links. You can find them. Google them. I'd be interested to know what other people think about a lot of this. I'd be interested to know what people think about the movie versus TV kind of medium, and how people see that. TV's, I will leave this note that say that, TV shows are a bigger commitment typically to people, just because they're multiple weeks and much longer. And, but anyone that's a story driven video game player, kind of knows that commitment. You can get in contact with us, start the conversation, yell at me for my opinions by joining our Discord, which you can get to at discord.pnapodcast.com.
If you'd like to read our show notes or find any of our older episodes or drop us a line via email, you can visit our website at pnapodcast.com. That's P, the letter N, the letter A, podcast.com.
If you're enjoying the show, we would just ask that you could share it with some others that may enjoy it as well.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you next time.
I only want to talk about one more movie, just because it's not a video game. It's Batman, the Batman that came out, was that dark. That was, man, you thought the trailers were dark.
I haven't really paid too much attention to it because I am not a huge Batman fan. Like I see the movies when I see the movies, but like I don't really get wrapped up in Batman too much. Although I do really like the character. I actually like Bruce Wayne and Batman and that whole thing.
I really like the character in the Justice League TV show, the animated Justice League TV show. I think Batman is the coolest person in that TV show.
Weird, but okay.
I know. Callback, right? Like really old. I generally have not been a huge fan of the movies. Like they've been good, but I don't consider them the cinematic masterpieces that many of people do. I recognize and understand why others do, though. This one, someone else wanted to see it, and I went with them. And I think it was a good movie. I think, like, I know I've been super negative, like this whole episode of P&A, but I think the Batman was worth seeing. I think it was definitely worth seeing in theaters if you care if you care for that experience. I think it was worth it. And it was definitely dark. Not a huge fan of the new Batman, of the new Bruce Wayne, but he wasn't bad. But no, good movie. I'm happy though. However, really what I want to say about this is they seem to be, and I'm using they very like big air quotes here, being very deliberate about what movies go to theaters now. And Batman is definitely one of those movies that should go to theaters. And I am happy I saw it in a theater. Do you get that feeling? Because I know a lot of people don't. Do you get that feeling where you're like, I have to see, or like, I recognize the theater experience as something worth paying for?
Yes, I recognize the theater experience as something worth paying for, but it also elevates my expectation for the movie fairly significantly. Like, I need the movie to be a certain level of good in order to make it worth, A, leaving the house, but B, spending money to go do this thing. And sometimes a decent bit of money if you're going to see like one of these big blockbusters. I think we've talked about this before, but it's been a while. So I like to see, we have a local theater that's like pretty inexpensive. And actually my bar for seeing movies there is pretty low because it's not far away. But if I'm seeing something like the Batman or something like a big actiony movie, I want to go see it in like a Dolby 2D experience, something with the reclining chairs, with the good sound, with the good picture, like something that's leaps and bounds above anything I'm ever going to have in my house. Whereas I have, a good TV, I have a decent sound system, and I can pause the movie whenever I want if I'm at home. So the inertia there, like the barrier that they have to overcome in order to get me to go see a movie in theaters is higher, I would say, than just to see it at home.